9. Calling the public session back into order. Thank you for waiting for us. It's becoming a habit on my part to have to apologize to people in the audience for waiting. I'm sorry that we ran over a little bit for our executive session. But I'm calling us to order, and we're going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. And let's see, Mr. Trent, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We need to draw your attention to emergency exits. Follow the signs if you need to in case of an emergency to get out of the building as quickly as possible. Please remember, we've got a smoke-free school district, which means no smoking in the building or anywhere on any of our campuses. If you, the yellow comment cards, if anybody wants to speak, you'll need to fill out a yellow comment card. So we've got our consent agenda that comes up, and you can, I believe, start with that, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's you. You're
Go
doing
ahead.
C1 through.
All right, so
4.
what we need to consent to is going to be C1 through C4. Do I have a motion? Yes, Mr. Nix, a second. Mr. Trent, any questions, comments, discussion?
We have to separate C1.
You want to pull out C1?
Mrs. Santo was absent last week.
Oh, okay. So now, technically, how do we undo this motion to go back?
Did we get a second?
Yeah, we did.
So the person who made the motion has to
Yeah, I can
agree
withdraw
to.
You want to withdraw
Yes, I
it?
withdraw my motion.
And that takes the second right with it. So, okay, so now we will do C1 separately. So a motion to consent to item C1, Mr. Nix, Mr. Trent, second. Questions or discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving item C1? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 in favor and 1 abstention, or 1 abstention. All right, then we need to consent to items C2 through C4. Again, Mr. Nix has made the motion, Mr. Trent has seconded it. Any discussion or comment on any of these? Seeing none, all in favor of consenting to items C2 through C4, please raise your hand. I've got, it's unanimous. All right,
No, I'm on.
you are
I
up.
am on. So we begin communication and announcements with a special recognition of one of our Vern Fritz Elementary teachers, Carolyn Kelly. Here to make the introductions, we have Ms. Mazziotti, principal of Vern W. Fritz, as well as Mr. Chris Maresco, PTA Council President. Would you please go?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Welcome, everybody. Mrs. Carolyn Kelly was selected as the Suffolk Region PTA's Head Brigham Teacher of the Year Award. This award honors one great teacher from Suffolk County who is active in the PTA and strives to achieve a stronger relationship between home and school. Bridging this gap is key to providing a better educational experience for our children. Mrs. Kelly has been a tremendous part of the PTA, encouraging parents and teachers to be involved in helping to strengthen the bond between home and school. For this and so much more, there is no one more deserving of this award. Congratulations, and thank you for all you do.
Good evening. It is with great enthusiasm that I take this opportunity to congratulate Vern W. Kritz Elementary School's first grade teacher, Carolyn Kelly, for being selected as the Ted Brigham Teacher of the Year. Mrs. Kelly and I have worked together for the past 2 school years. She is extremely dedicated, detail-oriented, self-motivated, and highly creative. Mrs. Kelly has been a grade 1 teacher at Vern Kritz Elementary School for 12 years. She is a determined individual who strives to reach her fullest potential each and every day and always has her students in mind. She has demonstrated time after time that she is an educator who truly loves her job and the students not only in her classroom, but the school as a whole. Each and every day, Mrs. Kelly greets all of the students individually and takes the time to inquire how their night was. She continuously goes above and beyond being a teacher at Vern Kritz Elementary School. Mrs. Kelly has been actively involved in the Vern Kritz Elementary School as a member, PTA member, and the teacher liaison. During her time as a classroom teacher and the PTA teacher liaison, Mrs. Kelly has established strong relationships with students and their parents in the South Country Central School District. Numerous parents and students seek her out for advice and guidance. She is very patient, kind, and inspirational to the families in the school community. Mrs. Kelly is always looking for the positive in any situation in order to keep everyone optimistic about the current situation. Mrs. Kelly is a team player and works well with others. She is always the first person to get involved to include parents in all activities. She is continuously and tactfully advocates for everyone in this community that makes up the South Country Central School District. She is always readily available to lend a helping hand no matter how big or small the task is in order to accomplish a goal. Congratulations, Carolyn, for being selected as the Ted Brigham Teacher of the Year. It is truly an honor that is well deserved. The Vern W. Kritz Elementary School community is extremely lucky to have you as part of our family.
I'll just make an observation before we get up and give you your certificate and you get your photo taken again. I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time last week at the awards ceremony. And one thing that I heard and observed and that meant a lot to me is the fact that when you were nominated, there was this awful forms that had to be filled out. I say awful because I hate filling out forms myself, but there were any number of your colleagues that took the time to fill out the form. It was then submitted and reviewed on different levels throughout the organization, and you were selected as the award winner in Suffolk County. So I was very thrilled to hear that. I mean, not just that you're the award winner, but also that you're seen and honored by the people that you work with, because I think that speaks volumes about you as well. So thanks to everybody who was involved in this.
Yes, and we all did attend the dinner last Thursday. It was myself, President Hayes, Ms. Mazziotti. We had a few principals there as well. Ms. Moresco was able to recruit some of our principals. Dr. Colson was there. Dr. Raymond was there. Who am I missing? Ms. Calmaris was there. And I would echo everything that Mrs. Mazziotti said. And I'm in Carolyn's classroom a lot, simply because I really love the little one.
Infinity.
Come on up. And simply a
15
wonderful.
years, not 12, sorry.
Wow. She still got a red pen on you, didn't she?
I know it's not a trophy. Did you get what you needed? Because I was moving. I didn't realize you did.
Some nice point on your phone there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Moving on with communications and announcements, I'm pleased to announce that as part of our newly elementary counseling program initiative, each of our elementary schools will have a school career day program. Last year, Critz started it actually, and this year each of our schools will be following. This month at Critz, we will begin and we will end with Frank P. Long in April. So we're really excited about that. In follow-up to a parent inquiry regarding after-school extra help for sixth graders at our last meeting, we are planning and preparing to offer an after-school extra help sessions for core classes 2 days a week this school year. That program should start setting sometime next month and continue into next school year. And finally, I am happy to report that our varsity wrestling team has recently captured the league dual meet title. And this evening, the team is competing for the county dual meet title at Hop Hog High School with a first round against Lindenhurst High School. And that's all I have to announce for today.
Okay. Well, we next then have the trustee and advisory committee reports, and we'll just go around the table. If you've attended an advisory committee and can give a report to us about that. Yeah, Lisa DeSanto, please.
No reports on any advisory committees. I think quite a few of them are coming up next week and the week after, I do want to thank Dr. Gianni about the follow-up on the additional extra help for sixth grade. I think that is crucial. Middle school transition, it's often a very difficult time for even the best students, and I think it's a great opportunity to get students in the habit of going for extra help, because it's something that is very useful, whether it be middle school or even high school. So I'm very glad to hear that, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Aruda.
I attended the Frank P. Long PTA meeting with Mr. Trent. It was nice to see that Frank P. Long is continuing traditions. I just realized that this is my first year in 4 that I'm not at Frank P. Long. So it was nice to hear about some of the things that they're going to be having coming up, those experiences that I had with my own children. This Thursday is their 24 tournament for the 5th graders, so I'm excited to go back and see that as well. That's always a fun night. I had the pleasure of going to the Bellport Middle School Frozen Junior play. It was amazing. I, as a parent of a child there, of course I was sitting there and I had high hopes, of watching your little girl up there. I could not have been prepared for what was on stage. They were phenomenal. In fact, the first night, at one point, there was a little difficulty with the sound system, which happens. The children didn't miss a beat. They were true professionals. As a parent and as teacher, the amount of work that went into this production, I need to formally just publicly thank Mrs. Stieritz, who has given so much of her time, as well as Mr. Austin. The family that they created amongst these children was amazing. It's something that you couldn't teach. We had a parent, Miss Ferrara, who created the costumes for the children. They were amazing. I didn't think there was enough glitter in the world for these costumes, and it was gorgeous. The glitter, the lights. Miss Oya was the choreographer, and the children didn't miss a step. They really didn't, whether they were dancers or not dancers before they came in. They did not miss a step. I don't want to forget anybody. Kieran, who is one of our high school students, comes back and he's our stage manager. So that was very cool for them to be able to see a high schooler really run the behind the scenes. And Nicolette is one of the assistant producers. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be there on the closing night because she had emergency surgery, but the whole performance was wonderful, and I'm still trying to figure out how they actually got it to snow when we came out, because that was just the icing on the cake. And that's it for today.
I was gonna speak up before Miss Kelly left, and I said, I'm gonna wait until it's our turn, and she ran out the door, so somebody
Thought the
tell
same
her.
thing.
Or maybe she'll watch on YouTube tonight. But I had the privilege of having one of my children in Miss Kelly's class, and she certainly is very, very well deserving. And she's such an active teacher in everything that goes on in the school community, specifically the PTA. But she's at every event, and everything Miss Kelly does is done with so much enthusiasm. And that really kind of emits from everything she does, and the kids feel it. And I love that she's a community member because we get to run into her in the supermarket from time to time, and my daughter just thinks that's the greatest thing in the world. So we had a real great time, and Chris, great building, with plenty of great teachers, but I was so happy that first grade year that my daughter had her. She really is a remarkable teacher and community member. So congratulations to Miss Kelly, even though you're not in that chair anymore. But enjoy the rest of your night. That's it. The only other thing is, I've been at every basketball game this year, every home game. I was so happy to see, because some years we do it, some years we don't, and I don't know why, but I believe at least 4 or 5 home games this year, we've had a student sing the national anthem, and we're always blessed with so many awesome singers in our district. It really is amazing. So if you're at a game and you can get there early, I don't know if they plan when someone's gonna sing or not, but at least the last 3 or 4 we've had a singer, and I think it was only the same person twice, or it was 4 different. But they really are remarkable, and I love, and I kind of brought this up last time when we talked about filming games, and I love the fact that our students, you're not a basketball player, but you're a part of what's going on there. And we started a tradition last year where the dance team performs at halftime. That truly has become the highlight of the event. And I was late tonight because there was an away game in Smithtown, and they really put on a remarkable show of their students as well. They had music during the intermission. They had twirlers, which I didn't even know there were twirlers anymore. We had this discussion about how it was so popular when I was a kid, for young girls to twirl, and I don't think I've seen a twirling team, but they performed, and then their kick line performed, and it really is fun to incorporate so many other things other than just the basketball players and the cheerleaders. So I'm glad that we're doing that. It was nice to witness it at an away school as well. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Trent?
I just want to thank the PTAs. I've had the pleasure of going to Frank Pallone Buffalo Middle School PTA, and those are just remarkable people who work behind the scenes for our students. So I just want to thank them publicly for what they do. And that's all I have.
Mr. Parker?
I attended the PTA meeting of the middle school last evening. It was a small group, but I'm pleased to say everyone seems to be working really well together. I was surprised at the treasurer's report. They have $11,000 in the bank. I was very impressed with that. You guys are doing a great job there. I left there and went to since we were out so early, I left there and went to, along with Mr. Trent, we went to the Brookhaven School to see the musical, or the music that was, it was just absolutely fabulous. The kids were, oh my God, they sang so beautiful, and I was very impressed with just everything. I think our schools, I've had the opportunity to visit all of the schools now a number of times. I'm just so impressed with everything I see. So, keep it up. What are we doing?
Thank you.
I got to attend the Kramer Street PTA meeting, and it was actually a special presentation from parents for Megan's Law from the Crime Victim Center. It was a presentation called The Apple of My Eye. It was all about sexual assault and how to be aware of that, and how do we teach our children to be wary of predators in the world. It was a very informative presentation, very intense presentation, and they actually, via a grant through South Country Education Fund, were able to present this to the Kramer Street students. It's obviously a much more tame presentation than what we got, but I just thought that's excellent, and I want to thank South Country Education Foundation for that, and Ms. Benzie, the teacher who secured that grant at Kramer Street. It was very, very informative, and I just also want to say congratulations to Ms. Kelly, who happens to be my neighbor. I've known her almost my entire life. Both of her kids are friends with my sister, and so it's just a wonderful thing. So congratulations to her. That's all I have.
And I just had a couple of things to comment on, and it had to do with performances and student performances. I also went to the Brookhaven Elementary third grade chorus production last evening. And you had mentioned students singing the national anthem at the high school basketball games. Well, they started out with the third graders singing the national anthem. And it exceeded, in my opinion, a lot of what you hear in some of the professional athletic productions. It was wonderful. And in addition, the music teacher had them do one of the numbers that they did included certain instruments, and they made their own rhythm and made the beat and then sang appropriately to it. And I kept thinking, these are third graders, and it would not have occurred to me that a third grader would have the ability to do this. And it just said to me, if we set the bar high enough, our students are going to rise to meet it, because that's exactly what they did. It was a really good performance, and I see Mr. Parker and Mr. Trent nodding, so they know I'm telling the truth. I'd also gone to the high school, a high school concert a few weeks ago, which I enjoyed, particularly the segments where the students performed the music just on their own without any leadership from adults. And I thought, this is showing a maturity and an ability, again, that would have exceeded what I expected. So I'm happy to report those things. So yes, I agree with you. We've got some good things going on here, and it's good to get out and see them. So, all right. I think that's it for reports. We're back to Dr. Gianni.
Yes, and we move to items for discussion. And before the presentation, I'd just like to mention we have prepared budget binders, so you have one source for all of our budget information. We have and will continue to include hard copies in the budget binders, so you can write on them and make any notes you like or add documents into those binders as you see fit. You can take them home with you this evening, or you can leave them, and we'll just keep updating them as we move along. And our first item for presentation will be the review of the budget process and long-term planning reserves. I'd like to introduce Ms. Christine Costa, who will make that presentation.
Well, congratulations, Ms. Kelly. Welcome, everyone, to Budget 2021. So here we are. So the first budget presentation in the year for the board. We review the process, and we talk about some long-term financial planning, otherwise known as reserves, that the district has exercised in over the last couple of years. So types of school budgeting. Traditionally, there are three basic methods of school district budgeting. It's line item budgeting, zero-based budgeting, and function and object budgeting. To speak about them quickly, the line item budgeting is probably the most granular level of budgeting. You look at item by item, very specific. Zero-based budgeting is also known as, people talk about it, let's have a clean slate, let's start from the beginning, let's see what we need. And it makes people justify the efficacy of some of the programs that are being offered. and that's zero-based budgeting. And function and object budgeting, which is probably the most popular in most school districts, takes functional areas of operation that we all, speak about, general education, special education, transportation, benefits, and it takes those areas and looks at them in that vein, what's happening in benefits, what's happening in general education, and you build the budget that way. So how do we build the budget at South Country? We really don't use any one of those methods. There's no one method really is very mission-driven or constituent-friendly. So we do really a hybrid. We do zero-based budgeting and program planning budgeting. What does that really mean, for the district? It means that administration, we're always looking at what our goals and priorities are. We lay out recommendations and costs to the board, all in an avenue to meet those goals and expectations. And we have our buildings and our directors and our budget builders justify their programs, their requests, and their expenditures. What guides our foundation of what we're doing? It's really the board priorities that you have set for the district, and these are the priorities that the board has set. I guess it's important to go over them so we're all on the same page as we're building the budget, what we're always looking towards. We're always looking to support teaching and learning in the schools, and our kids are meeting learning standards and they're at or exceeding the expectations of those standards. We want to provide a safe learning environment for our students. That's not just safe, it's welcoming to all, and actually treats the whole child and educates the whole child. That's always important to us. The third is we want the schools to be the center of our communities. We want to build partnerships and relationships in the community. We want people to feel that the schools are the center of the community. And fourth, one of the board's goals was to recruit, train, and retain faculty that's representative of the cultural and linguistic diversity of our community. And lastly, we have to develop that all with a fiscally responsible budget, where we're maximizing our resources so we can develop the best educational programs for our children so that they can succeed in the future. So this is what guides us as we develop the budget, which is a long process starting tonight. So here's how the budget process starts at South Country schools. In November and December, before I was here, but Dr. Gervis did a wonderful job. All information goes out to the buildings. They get budget packages, they fill out forms, and they have to fill that out, justify their needs, ask for new requests, and they come back to the offices. They come back on December 13th, and they're all back in our offices. Next, in mid-January, which we're in mid-January, and we have completed meetings with all the principals and budget builders in the district, and we've discussed their budgets as they prepared them. We asked questions, what their thoughts are, where they're going towards, and they had to justify any additional requests that they were asking for. So those have happened already. In mid-February, usually that's after the time that about retirements in the district and other staffing items that are going on, we look at the staffing that we have in the district. What staff do we have to provide what we need and the goals that we want to accomplish? And then in mid-March, we're also schedule planning for our students. In mid-March, we marry that all together with our, what our students are taking, what our staffing is, and we start looking at, can we meet all those needs? Okay, so we just talked about our process, and we're going to pivot now and really talk about some of the tools that are available to develop a budget and to have stability for the tax levy for the community in the future. And we're going to continue to talk about this all the way through the budget process. So this is a good time to speak about what financial long-term planning items are available to schools. And here is a list of what's called reserve funds. These are some people refer to them as savings accounts. They're statute items where you can reserve money, put it in a place for a very specific purpose. Most of these reserves are governed by general municipal law, actually with the exception of two. The Capital Reserve Fund and the Property Loss and Liability Reserve Fund are governed under education law, but the rest of them are governed under general municipal law. What does that mean? It really means that those reserves are available to all public agencies, not just schools. Any town, local government, any government can use those reserves as they plan for the future. So the list includes capital reserve, an employee benefit accrued liability reserve. People refer to that as EBLAR. That's the word they use. Insurance reserve, a property loss and liability reserve, a repair reserve, a reserve for debt, a retirement contribution reserve, which used to only include the New York State local retirement system and now includes the TRS retirement system. That's new, and we'll talk about that later. Unemployment insurance reserve and workers' comp insurance reserve. I will talk about each of them just so we know what they can be used for, so the board, so we know, because this is what's available to us, and we're going to talk at the end about what we have, so we can see the full picture. The capital reserve is really a mechanism to put money aside to do work that would be capital, long-term useful life in nature, things you would bond for. So you could put additions on, do renovations to your buildings. This is a way to put money aside. And in doing so, you actually lessen in the future your cost to borrow and the legal and fiscal costs that come with borrowing money. So this is a way, to do that. These funds, the only item to note about this reserve is that because it operates like you were bonding money, you can't spend the money unless you go to your public and ask them via a proposition to spend the money. It's actually one of the only reserves that's true. The same way you go out for a bond issue and you'd ask your public, we want a bond issue, can we spend the money? It's the same with this. So that's the noticeable item with the capital reserve. And like almost all of the reserves, the interest that is earned on the reserve money, we must calculate that in our office, and that has to stay inside the reserve fund. We can't take it out for any other. The reserve fund continues to accumulate the interest that it's earning. The EBLAR reserve, known as the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve, it's available. It's had conversation in the last, I'll say, 10 years, but it's really available to only pay one item. It's the payout of time to staff. And time is defined as vacation, sick, or personal time. And in the past, just so you know, there were conversations, can this reserve be used to pay incentives? The answer is no. Can this reserve be used to pay for health insurance for retirees? It cannot. That has come down. Districts have had to unravel that. So this is only used to pay vacation, sick, and personal employees that are retiring. It can be spent without voter approval, and again, the interest remains inside that reserve fund. It accumulates its interest. Insurance reserve fund is available. It's not for health insurance type insurance. It's for property and casualty type insurance, things that you might be uninsured for. We do not have this reserve. And again, like all others, the interest stays with that fund. We do not have this because usually reserves like this are for self-insured school districts. We are not self-insured for property and casualty. We're a member of NICER, so we do not have this reserve. The mandatory reserve for debt. This is actually a reserve that's not in the general fund. It's in the debt service fund, a different fund for the district. And the debt service fund accumulates money sometimes over many years. You see in school districts when projects come in that were under budget. So if you go out, whichever way you pay for a project, you have to have an estimate of the cost. And when the project's finished, sometimes there's some excess that wasn't spent. $2,000 here, a little bit here, a little bit there, and over many years, money accumulates in this fund. This can only be used to pay down debt, principal and interest payments that you have in your general fund. Because the money came and for projects, it has to be used to pay off projects, and the way it's used is that you offset the cost of your principal and interest in the general fund. Again, the interest accrues to this fund and stays there, and we calculate that. Property loss and liability reserve fund, we do not have this at the district. Again, this is sanctioned by education law. It's really for districts that are self-insured, and it doesn't really apply to South Country. Repair reserve fund. This is a reserve fund that the district established in December of 2018. This is a slightly interesting fund. It allows you to pay money to fix things that are non-recurring in nature. Something breaks. I give an example of a boiler in your building breaks, and you need $100,000. You can use your repair reserve fund. The interesting piece to note with this reserve, though, is that any money used in the repair reserve must be replaced over 2 years. So if you spend $100,000 because we have a boiler break tomorrow, in next year's budget, we would have to budget $50,000 to replace, and the second $50,000 to replace the second year out. That's just an item to note. It's the nature and law of that reserve. Again, interest accumulates to this reserve. Retirement contribution reserve. This is a reserve that has been spoken about for at least the 20 years that I have worked in schools. And basically, that's this reserve under general municipal law was created, so it really only addressed putting money into it for employees that are members of the employee retirement system, the local retirement system, not the teacher's retirement system. So schools have been literally advocating and lobbying for the 20 years that I have known that this reserve has to be expanded. What good is it for us? The majority of our salary money is in teaching. Well, lo and behold, we've made some progress. The progress actually came from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, that they opined last year, that the reserve should have been, open for these things. So we now have, this year, the sub-fund, the TRS sub-fund of that reserve. It's not a separate reserve, it's a sub-fund. Here's the interesting piece of this reserve, is that they made sure to put language in of what you can contribute annually and the maximum that this reserve can get to. Annually, you can put 2% a year in of any of your employee salaries that are members of the teacher's retirement system, and the reserve can't grow larger than 10% of the salaries of all of your employees that are members of the teacher's retirement system. Obviously, a mechanism to keep the reserve from growing very high. And that's what the state just did that last year. Again, this reserve, interest accumulates to this reserve, and you can, by law, move money between the ERS and TRS components of this reserve just with the board action. Unemployment insurance reserve. This reserve allows you to put money away. Basically, most schools are self-insured for unemployment. And I'm going to go ahead too, because I'll speak about these together, and workers' compensation. They're pretty much the same. Most schools are self-insured for both of those, and this reserve allows you to put money away to pay for the costs, because we get claims from the New York State Unemployment Division of the Department of Labor, and they literally process our unemployment claims and ask us to just reimburse them. So this allows us to put money away to handle that, and we do that. And the same with workers' comp. We have a third-party administrator for both of these. They help us with the claims if there's any challenges to the claims, and they help us with the administrative functions. But we are self-insured. So the New York State Workers' Compensation Board, processes the claims for us, and when they process one, they come back to us and say, write us a check. And that's how these reserves work. They allow us to be able to smooth out any cost in those areas. So those are the reserves which are for very specific purposes available to a school district. And then we have the category of funds called unreserved funds. Unreserved funds fall in two categories. They're either assigned or unassigned. And basically the difference of the assigned, and we're going to talk about this a lot over the next couple of months, the assigned fund balance is basically that which the board decides to appropriate for the next year's budget. And this board, for example, this year that we're in now, 1920, the board appropriated $3.9 million of their unreserved fund for the following year's budget. So that's a decision we make in the budget development process as we go through the revenues and how we balance our budget. So that's what assigned fund balance is. And unassigned fund balance is that which is available that is not designated for anything specific. And statutorily, it's capped at 4% of your next year's budget. So whatever your next year's budget is, you multiply by 4%, that's the maximum you can have in this fund. And we're happy to say that we are at the 4% cap, and that is a place you'd like to be. As times change, it's a mechanism to smooth out your tax levy and deal with changes that's going on all around us. So here's the status of where we are. As of June 30th, 2019, this is from our financial statements, these are the reserves that we have and the balances that are in them. On workers' comp, $2.7 million. Unemployment, about $1 million. We funded for the first time teachers' retirement. It was brand new last year, $250,000. The ERS side of the retirement contribution, $4 million. The EBLR reserve, $5 million. And the capital reserve, $2.3 million. The board also appropriated in last year's budget development $3.9 million. You'll see that down below in the unassigned section. And the $5.3 million represents that 4% cap that you can have set aside for a rainy day. That's that number. And I'll quickly talk about what the $564,000 is. Accounting-wise, that $564,000 is required when you have open purchase orders in one school year, and the school year ends, and you haven't received the good or the service on that purchase order that you did in the prior year. There's a delay. People deliver things to us, or you're going to schedule someone to finish the gym floor in July, but you cut them a purchase order in June. if any open purchase orders that roll over from one year to the next, accounting transaction-wise, are required to be in that line. So last year, we had $564,000 of purchase orders that rolled from one. They were technically part of the prior year's budget. They just haven't been fully adjudicated. So that's what that number is, and that number fluctuates from year to year. And down below, you'll see underneath that $25 million total number, you'll see what's in our mandatory reserve for debt. That's in a different fund, the debt service fund, that's $1.7 million. And the story of having $25 million in reserves is a good one from the eyes of the credit agencies. The S&P is noted here. We have a AA credit rating. The highest credit rating you can have is AAA. And basically, the credit agencies are looking for healthy reserves, so you can weather storms financially in any district. So what that translates into lower cost to borrow money, if we have to borrow money.
I have a question. Where did you say that 3.9 million was going?
The 3.9 million is a revenue item in our next year's budget, so it supports, we're going to develop a budget that the revenues and the expenditures have to match. I'll use a round number. We have a $130 million budget. We have to have $130 million in revenues to support that. And that $3.9 million is one of the revenue items that supports our expenditure plan. So that's what you want. You want to have healthy reserves so you can make decisions and you can have stable educational offerings for all your students from year to year, and you're not making decisions that react to some of the times. So that's where we stand right now. Just so you know, during the year that we're in now, the mandatory reserve for debt, we've used $600,000 this year. So that was as of June 30th, but effective July 1, we used $600,000. And the capital reserve, we used that for the Kramer vestibule and window project, just so the board's aware. That was a point in time. Okay, what does the future hold for schools on the revenue side? Well, funding sources are very limited for us. Basically, we have a tax levy and state aid, and that's really where our money comes from. So we have limited options. Having reserves and financial planning is very important. This is the 9th year that we're living with the tax cap legislation. So it limits us. You know, if we want to pass a budget with a simple majority, we're very limited to operate within the tax cap. You might have heard over the last couple of weeks, Cuomo's been on a tour. I say he's been all over the news talking about how bad things are on the state level, between a $6 and $7 billion budget deficit. That was on the slide, and just this morning we got the first round of state aid numbers from the state, so we can talk about that, you know, as we move through the process. And one thing to note as we continue is that we're still operating under a foundation aid formula that's not fully running by law, all the way back when the state had severe fiscal crisis that they were in. And there are a lot of groups that talk about letting the formulas run because there are some schools that have high needs who would do very well. We're in a small group of schools, it's about 33 of us, that if the formulas were left to run, we would be negatively impacted. So we have to know that as that is coming up, or the conversation's happening, it's not happening now, we need to advocate to have a hold harmless provision in however the foundation aid formulas run. Because we don't want to be one of those districts that if they let them run, we would receive less aid than we're receiving now.
So just on that point, I just want to make sure it's clear, because I do bring this up every year, because it's a foundation aid increase is always a buzzword in the media when it's budget season. So when people hear there's an increase in foundation aid, it doesn't necessarily benefit us right now, correct?
It benefits us right now it does, because they're not letting the formulas run exactly the way they are written into code.
Okay.
We're not getting all the foundation aid. It's not a significant number as compared to some other districts.
Correct.
Right.
So I guess that's a better way of saying it. What I
Yes.
should have said it is that we're not getting what we should be getting in foundation aid because of the way the formula is now, or are you saying the
Well,
way?
there's a couple of factors at play, but formulas hold some things at base levels to prior years, and some of those base levels negatively impact schools if they have declining enrollment. There's a lot of factors in a lot of the formula calculations, some plus, some minuses for districts, but I think in your point, districts that are severely hurt by the way the foundation aid formula is running now, they're being really hurt because they're having swells of enrollment, and the foundation aid formulas are not accounting for that.
And that's important to mention because that is the buzzword of budget season right now, is that there is a fight and a push to change that so that the high needs districts are getting the aid they're supposed to, because they are being shortchanged.
Yes, and I think
Is
that, I
that-
think even the governor, if you listen to him, I listened to it yesterday, I listened to his speech, that was a recurring theme when he got to education aid about that. So I think that there's more to see on that in the future. I think that's the way that he, that he's at least talking. So that's where we are. So where do we go from here? The board will continue to explore their comfort level in using reserves and funding reserves. In the 1920 year that we're in now, we used $400,000 in reserves. That was in ERS and workers' compensation. Those were revenue items in the budget. The board decided to use those, and we used $600,000 of that reserve in that debt fund of accumulated money. We used that, and if you're looking at me, Mr. Trent, we used $3.9 million. We appropriated that from unassigned fund balance to be assigned. So, and we have to continue to advocate to give us the resources that we need to provide for our students, the best educational program that we can. And this is a powerful slide. This takes the district to see where we were and where we are. Not that long ago, I say 2005, it's really not that long ago, the district was in an operational deficit. Not only did we have no reserves, but we had a negative fund balance. We really spent more than we had. I am positive it was a tremendous amount of work to come out of that and get where we are today, so the district should be very proud of their efforts, and the board should be very proud. You'll see from 14 to 19, the district has maintained pretty much, from 23 to $25 million in reserves, and that's a wonderful tool as we are in uncertain times. So that's really where we are today, and we will refer back to this information as we continue to build the budget. And here is a summary of our meeting. So this is tonight's meeting, and our next meeting is February 12th. We'll talk about the tax cap and an overview of where we are, expenses and revenues. And then the meetings come down from there, a little more detail each time. Oh, sorry, I didn't do that. That's it. Thank you.
Questions? This is our first presentation. We're aware that there will probably be several questions as we move along, particularly at the next presentation. We'll be sharing with you the tax levy estimate. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the second item, no idling zones or idle-free zones. Next item for discussion is the creation of idle-free zones at our schools. This item comes at the request of a resident and parent in our district. I don't know, I see somebody. Is that Mrs. Clark? Okay. I've never met you, I'm sorry. But Mrs. Clark, who did make the recommendation, is here with us this evening. I invited her last week. And I'm going to read just a snippet of what you wrote. We are requesting that the district consider declaring the schools no idling zone or idle-free zone. On many occasions, I witnessed parents leave their cars running for up to 15 minutes while signing their kids out at pickup. Delivery drivers do it all the time. A no idling zone would apply to all vehicles regardless of size or reason for parking. So creating a no idling zone at our school will also create an opportunity for us to educate students, parents, faculty, and staff on the harmful effects of tailpipe emission. I've drafted a position statement for the board's consideration, which I'll read aloud. The Board of Education recognizes the need to promote the health and safety of district residents and staff and to protect the environment from harmful emissions found in bus, truck, and passenger vehicle exhaust. To the extent practicable, the district will minimize the idling of all vehicles parked or standing in front of schools or on school grounds by creating idle-free zones at each of our schools and provide drivers with the following guidance. 1, when waiting for students to be picked up, all engines should be shut off. 2, all drivers should turn off engines when they arrive at school and when they expect to be parked for no more than 10 seconds. And 3, idling is necessary for temperature control. Please restrict it to no more than 5 minutes. I actually drafted and took some of that language from current board policy with regard to bus drivers, which we actually have control over. This no idle zone would really affect or be planned for folks outside of our employ that we don't have any control for, because it's really a difficult thing to enforce when the folks aren't working for you. I also took those guidelines off of some information I found with regard to a campaign for idle-free zones, where I also picked off all of those signs that I believe are also in there for the board's review. So I offer this for the board's consideration. President Hayes, I don't know if you want to give Ms. Clark an opportunity to speak if you want. She doesn't want to.
You're welcome to speak if you like. No, okay. I was very happy when I read the email from the Clark family, and because again, we're trying to increase participation of parents and community members, and having more of a, the homeschool connection. And so anytime that we seek ideas from family members or community members that are good for everybody, we're happy to see it. And this is one that I'm glad the superintendent has picked up on and has given us some ideas about how to implement it. And I know I saw in the board packet the pictures of the signs.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing it like right now, but that's probably more because of my ineptness with regard to the computer than anything.
Well, I think we had in there maybe 5 selections, and that doesn't mean we're tied to those. If the board chooses to move forward with the statement, that's something we could look at later down the road, and certainly have the board's input on what you want to purchase and post.
My comment about those is the first one you had there was something to the effect of children's lungs,
Children breathing.
children
yeah.
breathing, or something to that effect, and it was in both English and Spanish. There you go.
Yeah, it's all attached, it's after the attachment.
Oh, okay.
You wanna just-
I'm just taking it right here, the first one here, because it's in English and Spanish. I like that particularly at the elementary and lower grade level. With regard to the high school, I was trying to visualize what we would want to do there, and maybe we just want something a little more, I don't know, consistent with like no parking signs and things like that. But that's just my own observation. I'm not wedded to any of these. I'd leave
But
it
in
up
2
to the.
languages.
I liked
Both.
that one.
Absolutely.
And I thought that the message there was a good one, because it shows why we're doing it. And that goes right along with the guidance here that you've given us about the position statement of the Board of Education. So that's my comment. Ms. Aruda has a comment.
If we're just talking about the signs, although I don't think it's necessary right now, but I would definitely go something more along the lines on some of the idle-free ones that say what idling is, to turn their engine off.
Even the picture, yeah. too.
Because for some, like, some individuals may not know, especially if you're talking about the high school and things, they may not know what idling is. So something along the lines where it's turn your engine off.
The green one.
Yeah, the green one, or even please turn engine off, no idle, just something along those lines. Again, I don't think we have to choose the sign right now,
Yeah.
but just to kind of have an idea, a direction.
I particularly like the first one, with the 2 languages. I think it's quite nice. And I agree, I think maybe the high school, a little color wouldn't hurt. The green is the idle-free zone. I like, it's more of a visual. I think people, older kids, they'll see that more.
Well, we could definitely design our own too. We don't have to
So
take
we could do
that
that.
as
This
examples.
is
Yeah.
just some examples.
But I think, yeah, I agree with Trustee Aruda, and Mr. Parker, having the dual language and making sure that it says turn your engine off. Make sure everybody gets the message. I think it's a great idea. Thank you to the Clark family for bringing this to our attention. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
We could incorporate into our campaign with the public in terms of asking the kids, the students.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's an idea.
Well, the counselors.
Counselor
Yeah.
suggested
Yeah,
it.
I don't want to take his credit.
That's a great idea.
I love that. Yes, I absolutely love that.
All right.
So, in terms of discussion, I
so-
think we've got a consensus here that we like what you've proposed in terms of a position statement for us. And,
So I'd like the board to act on that,
okay,
and then we will move forward with educating and selecting signage.
okay. There was a typo or two in the position
Whoa.
statement. So, should we just do a motion to
Does it
adopt the position statement and subject to grammatical corrections or whatever?
That works for me.
Okay. All right, who wants to make that motion? Mr. Nix, and second, Mr. Parker. All in favor? We've got 6 in favor and 1 absent right now for the vote. So, thank you for proceeding with that.
And thank you, Mrs. Clark, for your thoughts and ideas. Okay. Moving on to curriculum and instruction. Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 through G3.
Just a second while I get back to where we are. Okay. Is there a motion to approve G1 through G3?
Motion.
Ms. Aruda, second, Mr. Nix. Questions or discussion? All in favor? There's 7 in favor? Okay. So that consent is given.
Can I say something before you join?
Sure.
I just want to say I noticed
Well, wait, which one is this you're saying something about?
the senior trip.
Okay.
I want to say I was pleased to see the fundraising opportunities plan attached to the trip. I think that I read through it. I love that idea. But if there's under the event that there are students who still can't afford the trip after going through those items, Dr. Johnny, is it possible for you to let the board know? Because I don't think that anybody should be left behind. So if I, have to contribute myself,
I
definitely would.
can certainly ask administration to relay that to me, and I can inform the board. Sure.
Thank you. And then,
Okay.
I guess you want consent for H1 through
Yes, I just want to
H5?
write myself that note. So
Oh, okay.
And moving on to personnel, administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in H1 through H6.
I need a motion then to approve items listed in H1 through H5.
6.
Right?
And through H5,
Well,
H6
six
is
the
just
catch-all.
everything.
Yeah, did I?
Yeah,
H1 through 5.
H1 through H5.
6 is the approval.
Yes, okay, 6 got pulled off. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Here we
So
have
we're
TV.
correct now, it's
Yes,
H1 through H5?
H5.
Do I have a motion? Mr. Nix, second. Ms. DeSanto? Any discussion or questions? None? Okay, all in favor? We've got 7, it's unanimously approved.
Moving on to business, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I1 through I7.
Okay, is there A motion to approve the business items in I-1 through I-7. Mr. Trent, second. Mr. Parker, any discussion or questions? Okay, Ms. DeSanto.
It's, to my recollection, the first time I've ever seen us approve a photography contract, which, quite frankly, it's something I've brought up in previous years and other boards haven't been interested in the notion. So I'm wondering, number one, why this one has been brought forth, and then my number two issue is I've been hoping all along that we would have a district-wide contract because I'm hoping to see an economy and scale for photography. I know that a large percentage of our families can't afford the regular packages for photography, and a significant number of our seniors can't afford their senior portraits.
This is a direct result of doing that consolidation. All schools are now using LifeTouch.
Okay.
Yeah, this was the only one that wasn't using it.
Yeah,
It was a
this is the only one that
That's
wasn't.
There was a
why
lot
it's
of
the
discussion
middle
amongst
school.
parents this
Okay,
year about,
so-
it created a lot of problems, and I believe the one company that the middle school used was a problem.
Yes. Well, they didn't get the discount because it was this.
Yeah,
it's the one and only, what was the name of the company, Mr.
Chase
Morris?
Simon
Stanley.
Irvin.
Irvin. Right.
Urban.
And to, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Moresco is the one that helped solidify that coming across to everybody. And I know that was discussions in the PTA, so thank you very much for kind of bringing that
Yeah,
together.
from what I've heard, this is like hugely popular with the parents, right, with the families right
You're a
now.
big, you're a
It
big
is.
fan.
A lot of people happy about this one.
Agreed,
for sure.
agreed.
It's probably been 3 years in the worst, but Mr. Moresco brought it home this year.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Happy to finally see that.
Okay, just quickly, on the CTA, the Curriculum Travel of America, one, I want to retract last week, I had said it was last meeting rather, I said it was $375, it is $325. My error also came in the fact that originally it was stated that the children could do quads, triples, or doubles, and that would increase the price. That is still on the contract, however, the children can only do quads.
For the price.
But there is not an option for doubles or triples. Secondly, don't think that this is standard protocol, but we are approving the contracts, although this is already in the works. People have already paid. So typically, wouldn't we approve this contract prior to that happening?
Well, the money is fully refundable.
Well, no, it's only fully refundable if you pay the $33. Like, I chose to pay the $33. The money is only fully refundable if you choose through the company to pay that additional $33. And the contract itself is somewhat wrong in the sense that they're saying on there the 4, the 3, and the 2, where we only have the option of having the quads.
Well, I think the listing is itemizing, it doesn't.
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the fact that those other items. are
Right, I
listed-
just, like I said, I feel like we're approving this 2 months after, or actually a month after, the process had already started. The first payment was due December 20th, although we did extend it. I do think this is something, just moving forward, that we need to look at.
It was kind of unique this
Yeah.
year with
Yeah,
the
definitely.
8th grade trip.
I also kind of feel like that with the minutes and I probably should have spoke earlier, the minutes, when we're talking about the board minutes and we're approving them, they come up on Facebook before we approve them, on our Facebook page. Like our,
The board notes.
the board notes, which are pretty
Board
much,
notes, not
yeah.
the minutes.
Not the minutes, but they're coming from the minutes. So if we don't approve them, the notes, so we may want to consider waiting for an
We can simply
approval.
stop that happening, that's.
Yeah, it doesn't have to,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we need to stop the notes, but I think that
No,
maybe
no,
we should,
until the minutes.
until the
approved.
minutes are approved, in case there is something that comes up and then all of a sudden it comes into the notes. I'm just foreseeing any hiccups.
No, that's
Sure.
No,
a good
point.
observation.
Thank you. So, oh, I see the rates here.
Right.
Okay.
When do the board notes come out after a meeting? How soon after a meeting?
It varies.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
yesterday.
drafted within a week.
Within a week after a meeting? The only problem with that, and I get the point, right? If it's not problematic from a legal standpoint, it could be a month before we let people what happened at a meeting a month ago.
Yeah.
So it kind of defeats the purpose of trying to push information out, and if something really good happened tonight, you know, or it did, right? Why wouldn't we want to push someone and say, hey, tonight's board meeting, you know, we honored, you know, a staff member for a prestigious award through the PTA. So I'd like to kind of maybe discuss it a little bit or just vet it out a little bit more, because I wouldn't want to, it's old news by the time we push it out,
Can I
right?
make a suggestion? Let's break that out and tack it on after we finish whether we're gonna
Yeah.
approve this
Good point.
contract, because
That
we're
was
kind of
smart.
in the middle of doing the
Sure.
approvals. And I think everything that you've said needs to be talked about, so. We'd had a motion, it was seconded, we've had comments about it. Are you comfortable enough with the response that it's okay to go ahead and call the
Yeah,
motion?
absolutely.
All right, so, all in favor of approving this? We've got 7 in favor, it's unanimously approved. And now I can go, let's see, we did 1 through 7.
No, we did them all.
We did them
Yeah,
all.
we did them all.
We're up to, okay, so now, let's just add a discussion item, which has to do with how are we gonna deal with board notes and distinguishing that from board minutes. And I think that the points that you both made are good ones. Ms. DeSanto?
Well, I think really the difference is minutes are very specific, it's personal comments, it's votes taken. Board notes is just a little blurb about
Blurb,
happy
yeah.
news, so I see no reason in holding that.
And we can always publish a correction if we got something wrong that was corrected during the
It's
minutes.
true. It was definitely like this week's, not that it was a terrible thing, this week's notes were more specific. Not so much about the positive, and again, it was totally fine, I just looked forward, I looked into it thinking like, we're approving them before, but it does make sense, we don't want it to be too long, but it's just food for thought, that was all.
I think it's
Maybe
good
whether
to-
it goes out to the board first,
Right.
before it goes on to the page, just if there is any corrections, I'm not sure if that's something that we could think of. Again, there wasn't a problem, why not fix it before it becomes a problem?
I think it's good to get it out there as soon as possible, and the argument I would make is that we're streaming anyway,
Right.
so if we're just putting out like little blurbs about what's
Yeah.
happening.
No, that makes sense,
You
definitely
know,
makes sense.
people are gonna know what happened at the meeting if they wanted to watch the video too.
Makes sense.
So, you know, just like Mr. Santos said, it's not the votes or anything like that. If we just put out, we honored Miss Kelly tonight, where we talked about no idling, I think, you know, it's
Mhm.
different than going into
Absolutely.
like the
General.
substance of what happens in the
Yeah.
budget.
And I would like to see the board notes be more of a focus on things that we do that are kind of new and unique and, for example, at the last meeting, we gave the award to the Eagle Scouts who did the Purple Martin houses down at Squassix Landing. You know, to focus on things like that as opposed to the business stuff that wasn't, it was more routine. And so it's more of a
Highlights.
highlights and like let people know what we're doing, or, discussion tonight about the top quality of the music program at you know, the high school or the middle school or whatever, to be more something like that, because the board minutes are gonna pull up exactly what was the business that was accomplished. So maybe we can work on that a little bit.
Okay,
Agreed. Yeah.
we can do that.
Okay. And again, public commentary, but I don't think we've got any more cards.
Yeah.
Okay. Any closing remarks by board members? Mr. Trent, Mr. Parker?
This has, I guess, nothing to do with the school, but I did attend 2 Martin Luther King Day celebrations. One was a breakfast in Hop Park. We had over 500 attendees. It was actually a wonderful celebration. And the other was a celebration in Medford, sponsored by the town of Brookhaven. Again, well attended. So I was pleased to be a part of it. I wish we could have been part of it, but I represented us.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Mr. Nix?
I just want to, I forgot to mention earlier, I think that we should bring in the cast and crew of the middle school production to...
We're going to work on that, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know we've done that in the past with the high school production, so I think that that would be good. And thank you to Donors Choose and those individuals making donations in support of classroom projects at Frank P. Long Intermediate School and Ms. Zaffarano and Ms. Clayton's class. And that is all I have tonight.
And I'm going to add the parent volunteer to that.
And the Miss Oya, I have her last name, she's teacher over at Stage Door. I'll give you, do you have the?
Shoot me an email?
Yep.
I have Ferrara. Okay.
Ferrara, yes. And then I think we have 2 high school students. I'll show you an email with their names.
Great.
Mr. Puccini?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Yeah, that was basically it, and thank you. Again, thank you to everybody that worked hard for the production. I look forward to the high school production as well, and to Frank P. Long's 24 night, and I think Friday night is family fun night. That one I can't attend, but a lot coming up in all the schools.
Mr. Santa?
Well, since Mr. Ruda mentioned, the high school musical is February 7th, 8th, and 9th, so that's coming up prior to our next board meeting, so I hope everyone will take the opportunity, and as I've always said, it's the best ticket in town, so I'm looking forward to being able to attend that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, on that note, that's an opportunity, I think, after the shows are done, could we videotape that and broadcast it on our YouTube channel? I mean, that's something we should be, I mean, we have the equipment in that.
I know the DVDs for like the middle school, I'm sure the same thing happens at the high school.
I've never
So
noticed
they are
it before, but I
videoed.
just thought it
They
was.
are videoed. They definitely are videoed.
Yes, oh, yeah, yeah, so they
Video
are.
and because the parents could.
But yeah,
I
but the
think
parents
they
have to
purchase them.
pay.
Purchase.
That's
Yeah,
what
the
the
parents-
You purchase it,
But
but
if
we
we
have
could
somebody
have-
videoing it, the camera is in the back. It would
If
just
we can have
be,
help with VHS TV or something,
It would
use one
just-
of our cameras.
the only
to do it
flip,
for
and I
free
agree
for
with you,
parents.
Chris, on that. And I don't know if the same is at the high school, maybe you can, because the middle school is all self-funded and everything that they make, then that takes from them, and that, I mean, that's definitely
Well, how much,
something we can
hold
look
on,
into.
but how much money do they make off selling the DVDs?
$10, so you figure DVDs, what, a couple bucks?
Yeah, but so I guess my point is, how many are they actually selling? If they're making $500-600, isn't it worth it? And I'm not saying to broadcast it after the performances are over, so that you don't cannibalize people coming to see it, but we broadcast it out there so that next year, people will say, you know what, I'm not gonna miss that high school or that middle school musical
Can Mrs.
again.
Costa add more
We
to
could
the
have
funds then?
We could have purpose.
For that, for next year?
Well, not if you, well, I don't wanna get into that. I'll just get frustrated, but
I don't know if
it's
you wanna
open
ask
to,
council.
but it's open to the public. It's, what's different from going to a basketball game or public coming in and videotaping it and putting it out there?
Because if once a student is a focus of a video and is maintained as a record, it becomes a student record.
Even if it's.
So then the same thing, so the same thing goes for a video of an athletic event.
Well, so if it's just the athletic event, and it's the whole athletic event, that's not a student record because, you know, if you're just videotaping a game or you're videotaping the performance and you're not focusing on one person, then it's not a student
Yeah, well, it
record.
would be the whole cast.
Right, what if you
Would
just
be-
have a steady camera
So,
the whole time?
Actually, I'm not seeing the distinction between videotaping a game that has a group of students playing and videotaping a drama that has a group of students performing.
there's no distinction with regard to those two groups. My issue is if you are focusing in on one student and you are taking that student and it is then related to that student, then that's an educational record. If it's just the whole event, like if you take a camera and whether it's the game or the production and it's a camera from way back and it's just filming what's going on and it's available to the public, that's not a student record. So it
so-
depends,
All right, so that would be all right
yes.
to do that at the drama,
Yes.
as long as the camera's a stationary camera
That's
and it
correct.
gets the whole
Oh,
stage.
yeah, well, that's what I would have thought anyway.
Okay,
Because I can now make the same.
Oh, never mind, we're gonna talk after the meeting, never mind, it won't be long.
So it
So-
depends.
okay, so you can make you can make the recording of it. It's okay to use it as a fundraising device, since they rely on proceeds at the middle school.
Mr. Puccini was talking.
No, I guess, but to go back to my point is, listen, if they're making a ton of money selling the DVDs, I don't wanna cannibalize that.
No.
If they're making a couple $100 and selling 20 DVDs, I think it's worth it to explore casting a wider net everybody to say, hey, look at what we're doing.
Is it a club activity?
It's a question of superintendent, is it a club? Drama club?
Dra-
Is it drama
I
club?
don't know if it's PTA, I don't know if it's
It's not
club.
PTA, it's gotta be a club,
I
right?
don't,
It's-
I don't know.
Because we're paying the advisors to put on the production.
All right,
There's
so
no-
if it's
Sure,
a
but I
club
don't-
activity, club activities can have fundraising. So that is permissible.
Yeah, because we
So,
charge
but-
tickets prices, so I would hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad. If it is a club activity, it's a club activity, fundraising is permissible, selling the tickets is permissible, and the production is all permissible. The issue that you confront is, once the Board of Education or the district now says, I want that tape, I want to take control of that tape, it's no longer a club activity, a club thing, it becomes a district-sponsored activity, and those are the things that you have to look at.
We'd be here all night, but it is a district-sponsored activity if we're paying staff members to advise the students.
It is a club activity. The funding is under the student activity fund. It is a fund activity. And the students are the ones that really control that activity under the guidance of the facilities, the director or the advisor. So it is a school activity, but it's not a board-sponsored activity. It is a separate student classroom activity.
Okay.
So
It's
to bring
funded
back
differently.
the DVD or the video or whatever
Right.
and post it on the district website, then we would have a problem.
I think you would need to involve the club in that decision, right? Because that's a club activity. They're running the show, right? They're getting the tickets. They're selling the DVDs. All of that's permissible under the extra classroom activity, and the material is under that umbrella. If the Board of Education wants to take that and stream it, my advice would be to involve the club in that decision because it is essentially a club activity.
Okay, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but
Okay?
I tend to do that sometimes.
be my guest.
The word streaming to me means it's going out live, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a recording of a drama production or a chorus production. And then after the event is all over, loading it onto the district website for people that weren't able to be there and they could see it.
Yes, what I'm saying is
Okay.
that videotape,
Mhm.
right, is within a club activity presently, right? And the videotape is sold by the club as part of its fundraising. So if you take that videotape and then post it later on, right? Why would I pay for the videotape when I can get it off the district website for free? And so you are taking something that is in the possession of a club and generated by the club, and you are taking it now and putting it on a district website. My advice is, since it's a club activity, it's produced by the club, and it is a club fundraising activity, my advice would be to talk to the club, because the videotape and the maintenance of that videotape is right now under that umbrella.
And in addition, to follow up on Mr. Pacini's point, is we would need more facts about how much revenue is coming into the club from this. And, you know, does it make sense for them to continue to do it without us undercutting it? Or is it something that we would basically subsidize, for lack of a better word, so they don't lose revenue, but we would be able to put it on the website?
And so when it's a club activity and it's a club record, and you take it, and now it's a school district record, and it's a school district activity, there are just different rules in place.
No, I get it.
Why doesn't administration get the board some additional information?
Thanks.
So they
Okay.
can
That's
make an
good.
educated decision.
Ah, that's a good play on words right there.
Let's call it what it
Educated
is.
decision.
When you're watching a drama, or you're watching a play rather, it's nothing like being there in person. It's not really as enjoyable to watch it on the screen. You really don't get the idea. I mean, obviously, if you're the mom or the dad, you're buying the DVD because you're buying the DVD. Your kid is in there and you want to keep it as a memory. But if you've ever Googled a play and tried to watch it on TV, it's not. It takes away something.
Listen, I'm thinking of grandma and grandpa that are in Florida right now. I can't see the things.
Right. No, I hear you,
There's
Chris.
a million
I
different
do.
reasons to put it, so, I get it.
I'd be remiss if we took anything from the funds that they have, and it sounds like if we start to, and then we try to add money, then we're starting to cross over here a bit. And right now, they seem to be doing a really good job on their own, and I don't want to. It's not broken, so let's not fix it.
Got $11,000 in the bank at the BPA.
Right.
Sure do.
I think the 11,000 is the
PTA. Well, again, I don't
I don't think
know
that-
who's, I don't know who's capable.
Well-
We'll find
Oh,
that
is
out.
it whatever, okay.
Okay, I think that it's time to take a motion to adjourn. Who wants to make it? Mr. Nix? Mr. Trent has seconded it. All in favor? It's unanimous.